Welcome everyone. My name is Susan Patterson. I'm the host of this YouTube channel. This video addresses what churches need to know to reach out to pimps with the transformative power of Jesus Christ. It is a clip from our engagement work group meeting where men who are leaders in the fight against human trafficking come together to encourage and support each other. The three men in this conversation are Bishop Gail Oliver, who has a ministry to bring Jesus to the pimps, which is addressed in this video. The other two speakers are Terry Boykins, who heads up Pimp Proofing Daughters, and Ken Henry, who works with Black youth to counter cultural influences that make pimping so attractive, that he covers in this video where Ken shares about his Code Black program. The fourth video in this series for the Black Church is by Dr. Brenda Ingram, who addresses trauma in the Black community and how trauma, racism, and pop culture created a perfect storm to normalize prostitution so that pimping is often looked at as any other job, which makes it very difficult to address sex trafficking with pimps. I promise you, for those of you who feel called to reach out to pimps, these four videos are a powerful beginning. All four are located on the Education Resource tab at our website, throughgodsgrace.com, in the Equipping Black Churches to Fight Sex Trafficking section. We really need an outreach by churches to reach pimps, to help them get out of the life, as many want to do that, but they look around and they don't see any help for them. Hopefully this video will inspire more churches to join our Bringing Jesus to the Pimps work group meeting, and you can find the dates for that on our homepage. Without further ado, let's join the conversation now.
See, one of the pimps I was ministering to, his reasoning behind trying to be a Romeo pimp is because he's been to jail, he can't get a job. So that's the only way he can make a living is through pimping. And it's like I had to let him know the devil is a liar. The devil's trying to get you killed and get you locked up. But that was his reasoning. That and his mother wanted, but the sisters weren't prostituting. His mom was. So he also thought it was okay because his mom was a prostitute.
Bishop, you bring up a good point, and this is one of the things, because this is about the money at the end of the day. And so what I have found, a lot of these outreaches, a lot of these do good operations, when a pimp steps to them, he wants to know, if not this, then what?
Mm-hmm.
What you got for me? I got bills to pay. I got lifestyle I want to live. If I'm not going to do this, because I know how to make this money, what you got for me? And I need it now.
Yep.
And if you're not connected to resources, and you can walk him over there and say, look, see, this is about getting to know people who got stuff, and that can make stuff happen to counter what's going on. And this is why, I had a young man come up to me yesterday when we were, with the public defender, and he says, look, I'm about to get into this. And I said, well, look, let me ask you a question. If you give me 2 days, if you can get me to Monday, would you be open to looking at an alternative to go to work somewhere? And he says, it's paying money, yeah. So I just got to get him to Monday or within the time frame because we're going into the weekend. But it's about resources. And I think what happens here, we go out there ill-equipped with opportunities to counter these ministries. And these guys, it's about lifestyle. It's about clothes, cars, women, households, going places, eating out. And if you don't have something to really come up with that, you're on a wish and a prayer. I hate to say it, because you got to have something in your wallet to make sure that you can get them somewhere. And I think one of the things is we have to strengthen our resource toolbox to make sure that when you got a young homie that comes in, he want to be a Romeo, or he want to be a gorilla, or whatever it may be, if you can't flip him an alternative, you've lost that prospect.
Wow, that's a good point. So what is the answer to that problem? You know what I'm saying? What's the solution? How do we become more effective?
Well, I think too. I think what we also on top of that, what we have to understand is like the culture aspect of this. Like, how deep does this go? Because even outside of that, but that was tied into what you guys are saying is, and I'm sure you guys have heard of that, especially the West Coast, because that's where, if I'm not mistaken, a lot of that the events and movements are, especially Vegas. But I mean, how many of you guys have heard of the actual pimp and hoe balls? I mean, the Pimp and Hoe Balls, they've had documentaries literally on Netflix. You know, this is a huge thing for them. This is a community. It's a culture. It's like a church having a church conference or a
Yeah.
corporate event having and they have the big hotels and it's limousines pulling up and they actually have awards that people are winning for Pimp of the Year.
Kenny, you
You
talking
know,
about the Players Ball?
the Players Ball,
Yeah,
yes,
okay.
exactly. And so that is a culture. So you have to think about how deeply indoctrinated that many of these people are in. And here we come saying that this is wrong when you have hundreds of thousands of people and they're actually giving money, investing in philanthropy and all this. And how are you going to tell me I'm wrong? I'm a great citizen, and I actually help this little mentor program in my neighborhood as well and take them under my wing. So this thing is deep.
Yeah.
And so we have to understand that as we come forward. So it's all those elements of the money, of the alternative. But I really think what it's going to take is this us going. Don't stop the efforts that we're doing. Absolutely not, because there definitely will be those that we're able to help and pull out. But I think if we want to make a majorly strong impact, we have got to understand, man, this is psychological. We got to go deep. We got to start early, and we have to really get invested in the actual communities. And it's got to be consistent. And we're talking about these things, and we're actually building friendships with some of these guys, which is why I appreciate what you guys are doing, building friendships with some of these guys and figuring out who are some of the big leaders in these movements that people are respecting. So who's some of the ones that have written the books, that people look up to start building friends with them and actually being able to teach them from our perspective so they can see the trauma and how they're really tearing up the community, and how they're actually this progress that I know when you hear a lot of them speak, especially when they do acceptance speech, because I watched that thing from beginning to end and I was just blown away. I didn't even know anything like that exists. And I just sat there and thought about, wow, how deeply, like, they really believe that they're doing something good for the world. And these women believe that they are, we know a lot of the psyche, but I'm talking about the women. I'm talking about these are not the ones they put on the street. They've been on the street. These are the ones that are helping them with the organization and all this stuff. And I'm looking at the level they're doing this on. And if I'm a kid and I come from a place that is disadvantaged and I don't have much, and I see this, I'm like, wow, I could see myself wanting to aspire to that because everyone looks happy. Everyone looks like they want to be there. The nice cars, I'm looking at the diamonds and all this stuff. And I'm like, wow, I could see that. And, God allowed me, before I got involved in this work, God allowed me to meet a friend in the church that I was in. Had no clue. He was an English professor at Cal State Long Beach. And it turns out that my wife and the girl he was engaged to were really close friends, which they still are. Now, unfortunately, he has passed away, this guy, because he has sickle cell really bad. But Black gentleman, and he actually started telling me about trafficking, about pimping. He didn't say trafficking. He didn't use that term. And so I remember, and he grew up in South Central. So I was like, okay, I'm interested. Like, so you grew up around this stuff. He said, yeah, my uncles, everyone, that's what they were involved in. He said, that's what we all aspire to be, man. He said, and I'm talking about like real, like they wore the purple suits, the this, and they would show me pictures. And I'm like, wow. I was like, so I never met anybody that was closely touched in that lifestyle that grew up seeing it. And he said, and so they started training us in high school on how to be this way and how to, view women and how to use them for advantage. And for a while I was doing that until I went to college. He said in college is where, I started meeting folks. And then that's where I actually met the church, how I got involved in this church. And he said, honestly, that was the only thing that changed me. He said, is the fact that I started studying the Bible and I started realizing, wait a minute, this is going against everything that I've been taught to do and how I've been treating women specifically. He said, and so that's just a mission I've been on, is trying to talk to my family and friends and get them out of that, by using the word. So again, what I've seen would work with him, who was heavily involved, was he was able to, someone who was able to get him in the community and kind of get some time with him to do consistent Bible studies, to do consistent building friendships with other men that thought differently. So he got a chance now to see a different perspective. So I think the change is going to take, as we knew, I'm sure all of us, we're intelligent men here, it's just going to take a lot of grassroots things of getting involved in the community and building relationships with these people. And you're right. I think it was Terry that said this, the judgment, that there's no place for that with what we do, right? There's no place for that as men who call themselves men of God to have judgment. We see it's wrong. We know it's unhealthy, but we have to say at the same time, these individuals are someone God loves, that they didn't come out of the womb saying that here's what I want to do. Here's how I want to treat people. There's something happened along the way where they were conditioned, and now they're indoctrinated. So they believe that this is right. So we have to look at them with that spirit of love and with what we know who God created them, to be, and start to really build those relationships. And I think honestly, that's all I'm doing here, because that's the only thing I can think of that makes sense. That's logical. I know it takes time. So it's just building relationships with folks, helping these other organizations understand everything that I know there's so many things we can do, but everything that I feel I want to do is community based. I want to be involved in the communities. I want to meet the people. I want to touch the people. I want to build the relationships, have genuine conversations with the people. And it's offering resources to them. And, they're not going to right away make the money that they made on the streets. Let's just be very clear about that. Most of them don't have degrees or skills. Their skill is this. And so teaching them how to draw the strengths from that, how they've had to survive and all that, to put it into some kind of jobs or entrepreneurship, but allowing them to know that there's a vision, giving them a vision, like a hope for a future, that there's a hope that you can do more, with your skill set, but here's what you will not be doing. You won't be subjecting yourself to harm. You won't be feeling guilty and feeling like you have to numb yourself out with drugs because of, deep down inside, you don't like your body being used like this here. Deep down inside, you truly don't like beating on this woman that could be your sister or your niece or your cousin. Like getting to a heart level by themselves where there's a spirit of humility and transparency. I think for me, man, I think, and it's just love, honestly, really, truly. When you look at it, it sounds cliche, but it really is love in action. And that's what it's going to take from this. And I think that's why the church is called, because we have got to really do God's love. And God's love is sitting down with folks and giving them an opportunity. God loves is treating them with respect when nobody else treats them with respect, to hear them out and give them a place and I know it's hard as men, because I know it's hard for me. I have a 11-year-old daughter, and just sometimes just thoughts come in my head and I get very, very angry. I'm like, honestly, and I'll be honest. And I had one of those thoughts last night. But checking that, when that spirit hits me, check that. And to really force myself to look at everyone with love again, right? And to be able to sit there. And that doesn't mean there's no consequences. You have to have consequences, especially if we catch them actively doing something. Consequence them. But again, that even helps us, because now they're maybe in a place like jail where we can actually make sure we're able to go get some consistent time with them when they're away from everything and the distractions. So, that's just my take on that particular situation.
If I could, Kenny, this is because I get into it at a whole different level, especially when you go up the ranks and you get into the syndicate part of this thing. And Bill Gates got caught up in this game. I mean, just get a chance of where this thing is really playing at. And so when you talk about the church, I've had pimps that have sworn to me that God gave them this gift.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, you gotta, and Joe, and I appreciate what you were saying earlier about, how do you get these guys, committed? You gotta think like a pimp and move like a soldier. You gotta really understand the psychology, Kenny. I think that's what you're saying. It's the psychology of what this is like. And so if you have not seen, I think we invite ourselves to the player ball is what I think we do.
Right.
And get a chance to understand the environment. But when you walk in there, any young homie that's trying to experience lifestyle and he sees that, and he's got access to that, he's going to want to be that. And I tell you, you're so point on, and those are the, I know those are the young men I deal with, because they, over at the gym yesterday, they got the gold on. You can tell they're getting ready. They got a little something in their stable, and they're getting ready. And once they perfect that, so while we're organizing and talking about, all these approaches, they are doing. it's on the job training. This is real now. The networks with the motels, with the phones, I mean, they are live. And so, this is a heavy lift. This is a heavy lift. But if you don't understand how a pimp thinks and how a survivor thinks, this ain't the game for you. You got to be educated. I think someone mentioned about being education. I think Bishop mentioned about, education is key. And you don't just have to educate yourself about your commitment, but you got to educate yourself about how the game thinks.
Mm-hmm.
And I would add to that, though, that also the buyers, though, because it's, we're increasing buyers at such a rapid rate, through pornography and other things. We really have to understand what that dynamic that's going on in a man's mind that makes him willing to participate in the purchase. So we need those three. Really understanding on the trafficker level, the attraction and the psychology behind that, and also the victimization and the people who are being victimized, what goes on in their mind, how they're being groomed and processed to be exploitable, and in many cases submit to being exploited. But also really looking at the men who are being groomed to become purchasers, groomed for the demand. And we really have to look at that.
Patrick, I would say, even with Father Khan, if you have workshops on those three areas that you just mentioned, if you come to Father Khan, you must take one of these workshops. What you just hit was right on the button. And I think that, because that's how Pimp University works. You got to take the class. And I think Father Khan, you talk about the curriculum, the education, let's not do no feel good. Let's basically get folks enrolled in the workshops and get them in there and get them educated and get them equipped so that they can get back out to the field of play and do a doggone thing. But what you just said is really, those three components are the essence of what people coming into FatherCon must be educated on.